Hello everyone, Chun here. Just wanted to talk a little bit tonight about some of the training drills in Wing Chun and basically how it goes from learning the stances and the sets, right, and learning how to do the moves correctly with structure, right. Then you learn these training drills, and so from the sets you learn these training drills, and then the training drills kind of are showing you various ways to apply like the different tools against force that's coming at you, right? And then also how to blend with that or how to yield to force and come back, right? And so these drills are very important for you to go to that next stage after just doing the moves in the set, right? This next stage of actually making you able to test the moves against pressure, right? And to be able to develop sensitivity and reaction time, and not just sensitivity and speed and reaction and power. That's what most martial arts believe, is that you just need sensitivity, speed, reaction, and power, right? With Wing Chun, it's all of that plus this idea that we're going to stick, and then when we stick to you, we're going to use structure, power of structure. And that's what a lot of people forget. They just think, oh, well, it's just going to be kind of blocking something, and it's going to be in the air. You're going to have all this air and space in between your strikes. So when something comes in, you're just going to kind of trap it down and have all this air, right? When actually in real life, usually, you trap and then they're coming around and just trying to slide up and hit you, right? And so really with Wing Chun, a better type of Wing Chun is actually sticking, controlling, not just trapping to open up space to hit, but to stick and control and to follow up their arm and hit, right? Hit them while sticking, okay? And so that's why with these drills in Wing Chun, then it goes from drills that are just, making contact, like a simple punching drill, right, where somebody might be just pocking your punch, right? And then it gets to the point where you're learning single sticky and then double sticky chi sao, right? And then a lot of people, they take chi sao to like kind of like a freestyle chi sao where they're trying to get in and trying to hit you in that, but it's still only part the way there between the sets that you learn and the forms and the structure of Wing Chun and actual fighting that's at the end of this training. Okay, so Chi Sao is a little bit closer to that, but really, when you learn Chi Sao, like I just posted that video of me, my student from 8 years ago. When you learn Chi Sao, first you're just kind of learning that rolling and sticking so you can kind of smother the opponent, right? So in a way, it is a lot like grappling because you're smothering. So it's not just to, be like normal sparring where you're just, in the air throwing all these strikes, right? And there's no sticking. And I call that unbridged. Unbridged attacks are just, if you were sticking, they'll leap away or they'll break away to come and hit you, which that's what most martial arts try to do, right? And so Wing Chun tries to intercept and stick. And then when we stick, then we try to follow from where we're sticking to the closest way to strike. And usually we want to keep sticking because then we can feel if that person's going to leave our hand and circle to hit us, to try to hit us again. And so if we jam something down, the minute we feel their hand move, we know they're going to move that to try to come back with a hook or whatever. And we know then we have to go straight in again. And usually we're ending up using part of the forearm and the elbow when they try to unhinge or unbridge and try to hit us, then we're using that part to find where they've left. So then we can kind of find them and jam them as we move in, and we're hitting them with something else. Okay. So anyway, the point I wanted to make is there's like a lop sao drill, and a punching and a pak sao drill, and there's a feeding drill which gives you which teaches you to react to different things coming at you that's not prearranged, right? So that's what our feeding drill does. And in many styles of Wing Chun, they don't have a feeding drill like my lineage. And I think that feeding drill is one of the best things because it's when you uh, aren't bridged or you become unbridged, then you need those moves that are in that feeding drill. Okay. So then with Chi Sao, you learn single sticky, then double sticky, then you learn this kind of rolling that's kind of freestyle where you're trying to find openings, right? Then you do this rolling where you're both in a forward stance and you start moving. You start moving around with footwork and you start shifting with it. And you're still trying to do the Chi Sao, sticking, controlling, and finding openings. Okay. Then at that point, then it goes into something called Gorsao, which is almost like a freestyle sparring, okay, where you're unbridged. So you start out unbridged, kind of like you would with sparring. And then you have to, from the opponent coming or for you attacking, then you actually have to find out of that flurry of strikes, maybe you're going to dodge a few of them and come in. But then when you're bridged in that flurry, then that's where you start using some of the chi sao techniques, but you're still going fast and finding the openings and protecting yourself at the same time. So it doesn't just become a free for all where you're just trying to strike each other as much as you can. Um, but it's different than just the chi sao where you're trying to stick the whole time. Okay. So you get to that point where you're doing this gorsao that's unbridged, where when you do get into the fray, then you will bridge slightly, but then you'll also use that to find openings. And so then you're actually fighting, okay? And then that's about 80% there. And the other 20% is when you're using footwork and kicking. And footwork, I mean like circle sweeps and stuff like that. And Buma, which is you're using your stance to actually uh, cut into the person's stance to throw them back, right? It's called Buma, which is like a penetrating forward stance, right? And so you use that or you use, the various Wing Chun kicks. And so what you have to learn is that when you go into the flurry and these punches are coming, that, some will come close or might even kind of snag you and hit you, but you'll be moving and returning, and then when you find the bridge, you'll kind of use your chi sao skills. But when you make that contact, then you're feeling what to do with your stance. And you're feeling, okay, is this a good time, from his energy that I can lop and actually kick him at the same time? Lop and kick as I'm throwing a chop in there and coming down with more punches. And so the effective fighting that's on the end of all this training from the sets and all these different drills becomes a type of sparring, but it includes chi sao and some of the techniques from our feeding and our other drills in the moment or in the second that it's happening, because all those drills have taught us how to fight or how to use the movements with structure. And so we're not just using Wing Chun like punches and strikes, but we're actually doing the punches and strikes with the type of angular structure that goes through the body that powers that. Okay. So it's different than just taking Wing Chun hands and just sparring with them, because you need to have that structure that goes all the way down through the body. Okay. So then when you have that structure behind all your kind of defensive and attacking tools, right, as you're reacting to whatever's happening and you're coming in, uh, then that's, like I said, 80% there. And the other 20% is as you're doing that, you're moving and you're using legs, and your legs are kicking. And so you don't really see that much in Wing Chun, but really the legs are destabilizing. If somebody's kind of matching you with what you're doing with your arms and they're, pretty good at, staying away or whatever, then you need to be able to have your legs working at the same time as your hands. So we don't break away and then kick and then come back. We're actually, making contact and using legs at the same time, using our feet. So you could say that Wing Chun is using the legs, which is how we're using the stance the whole time. But kicks are a very important part, and so a lot of Wing Chun schools, they neglect the kicks. I think they're kind of an afterthought, and so really, the kung fu at the very end, the kung fu for fighting, the Wing Chun for fighting, is incorporating all of that, those skill sets into something that is in the moment, and it's explosive, but yet it's flowing, and at time it's yielding, and it's snapping, and it's springy, but it's also very powerful. And I mean, the punches are coming down, and they're hard. It's none of this just little flicking stuff like you see when people are just doing peace out and they're just kind of flicking at each other, right? No, it's real heavy, solid striking that's happening, and solid kicks, and the kicks are going to usually to the knees, on the side of the knee, the front of the knee, pushing it back, or the back of the knee and pushing the whole leg down as you're raining strikes down, right? And so to me, that is the full kung fu, is when the hands, the stance, all the tools are using structure, and that the hands and the legs are working together as one. Then that, to me, then that is the real kung fu. So Wing Chun over here, that's just standing there, that's just doing chi sao and finding openings, that's only about maybe a little bit more than halfway, because it really needs to escalate and become more and more intense with speed and power and control, and using then footwork and then kicks, and then it becomes kind of the full fighting art. And I think what people are seeing is they're seeing Wing Chun people do the sets, do a couple of drills, and do these pre-range drills and pre-range reactions. And then they get about right in the middle where they're doing chi sao, some gor sao, and moving around. And maybe they do get hit with some good shots, and then they think that that's the way that they need to be when it comes to fighting. And the problem with that is when somebody attacks you on the street, and they're probably going to use, boxing punches and full power stuff, you can't play chi sao with them and use these stinging little attacks like you've been training in the school, because the school only goes that far usually. And so to train your strikes so they're really powerful, you need to do that at home and have, real heavy bag or heavy sandbags, possibly a wooden dummy. And you have to train for that kind of power, for the elbow power in that short space. So you're not just doing the normal Wing Chun punch that's maybe 40% that you train when you spar, even though it's fast, and it's relaxed. It has to be almost that 100% dead weight power that you're training for the bag. And then that has to be used when you're in a real situation, right? And so what happened to me one time, I was jumped by a guy, came out of nowhere, and he kind of grabbed my throat. And so I was used to class. So I kind of brought my forearm against his arm and ran down his arm, and I was just kind of hitting his face, kind of like in class, but not very powerfully. And after about 3 or 4 times, then he kind of released his grab. But then what he did is he came back with a hook and nailed me right in the face, full power, because I was just trying to kind of get him off of me, like we did with class, with like that 40% of power, which, we were being polite in class because that's how we'd spar. And so I wasn't really prepared for full power when somebody's really attacking you. And so, I ended up with a good black eye out of that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let somebody damage my body like that again. And so somebody even touches me, it's going to be full power, like I do on the bag, full body power, and not this polite kind of stuff that we did when we were training in class. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that tonight, because Izzo did a video where he's just talking about Chi Sao tonight and how it's kind of misunderstood. And he was saying, really, you need to have whatever, with your intent of how you're training Chi Sao, you need to be able to have that training intention where you can actually use it and not just become a Chi Sao player, which is like, a lot of the masters are that way. Unfortunately, a lot of the masters, a lot of the Sifus, they're excellent at Chi Sao, and it's kind of like a game of chess with them and they're moving. And yeah, they are kind of perfect and they're able to be kind of soft and use structure. But you see, it's not a real fight. It's not somebody really trying to punch their head off, because then you'll see that even the instructors are going to respond and act differently. Somebody's really trying to punch their head off full power, like using like boxing type strikes or whatever, then you're going to see them kind of get space and really try to intercept that stuff and move in and control it a lot differently than they do when they're doing just the chi sao and when they're just playing with people. So just wanted to talk about that tonight.